Out here in the desert, we don't get visitors. Not people, not animals, not unless they're lost or running from something. That's how I found him. Or maybe that's how he found me. It was late October, one of those dry, bone-cracking afternoons in Arizona when the wind kicks up just enough to make the sand whisper. I was on my way back from checking the cattle fence. It had been busted again by wild hogs the week before when I saw something moving by the roadside. At first, I thought it was a coyote, mangy, limping low to the ground. But then it looked up, and I'll tell you something, I've looked straight into the eyes of a rattlesnake coiled under my porch. I've stared down a cougar in a snowstorm. But this look, it stuck with me. Deep-set yellowish eyes. Not wild, not scared, just watching. Like it knew me. It was a black Pitbull, maybe 70 pounds, scarred muzzle ribs showing tail low but not tucked. The kind of dog you know has seen too much. Some folks would have driven on by. Heck, some would have put a bullet in it. But I slowed my truck, rolled the window down. "You lost, buddy." It didn't growl, didn't bark, just stood there in the dust, panting slow. I don't know why I opened the door. Maybe I was lonelier than I cared to admit. Maybe I felt sorry for it. Or maybe, and I'm not ashamed to say this, now I saw myself in that dog. Worn, tired, but still standing. He hopped in, no hesitation. I named him Shadow before we even made it home. Hey folks, before we dive deeper into this chilling story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and follow us here on Animal Story. We bring you true gripping tales about animals that changed lives, saved people, and sometimes brought something darker. Don't miss what's coming next. Now back to the story. I live about 14 miles outside of Clifton, on a dry stretch of land with nothing but cactus rattlers and old ghosts. My nearest neighbor's a mile away, and the only things that visit my porch are wind and time. Shadow settled in like he'd always been here. First night, he didn't bark, didn't whimper, just curled up by the wood stove, let out a sigh like he'd finally stopped running. Over the next few days, we fell into rhythm. I'd go out to feed the horses, he'd follow. I'd sit on the porch at dusk with a beer, he'd lie at my boots. Didn't matter that he never wagged his tail, he was present. Quiet. Alert. Like a soldier off duty, but never off guard. But then things started to shift. It was small at first. One night I found him standing in the middle of the field, just staring out into the dark. Wind howling, but he didn't flinch. His ears were perked, body tight. Another night he started digging behind the barn obsessively. Not looking for mice, not playing. Digging deep like he was trying to reach something buried. And then the scratching started, always around 2:13 a.m. At first I thought it was raccoons on the porch. But no, it was him. Clawing at the back door like he wanted in even though he was already inside. I started locking my bedroom at night. One morning I woke to find a dead jackrabbit on my pillow. No blood, no mess, just lying there. Neat, intact, like a gift. That's when I knew. Shadow wasn't just some stray. He was trying to tell me something. Or maybe warn me. It was a Thursday morning when the sheriff's deputy rolled up my driveway. You don't get many visitors out here unless something's wrong. And the way that county truck kicked up dust and pulled in slow engine humming low, like it had something to say before the man even stepped out, I felt that old familiar gut twist. Same feeling I got the night my father didn't come home from the mine. I was on the porch, fixing a busted bootlace. Shadow sat next to me, silent, like always, eyes trained on the horizon. The deputy climbed out, tall guy in his 30s, clean-shaven Stetson tilted back a little. Looked like he'd rather be anywhere but here. "Morning," he called out. "You, Hank Morgan." "That's me," I said, standing. "What brings you out this far?" "Deputy." He didn't answer right away. Instead, He took one look at Shadow, who hadn't moved an inch, and his face changed. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. Maybe even regret. "That's your dog." Found him a few weeks back. He was wandering Route 191. No collar. Looked half dead. "What do you call him?" "Shadow." The deputy nodded slowly and pulled a manila envelope from under his arm. I noticed his hand had a slight tremble. "Mind if I show you something?" He opened the envelope and slid out 2 photographs. The first one, I damn near dropped my coffee. It was a grainy snapshot, probably from a doorbell cam. Nighttime. A man's silhouette slumped in a hallway. Blood smeared across the wall behind him. And in the corner of the frame, the unmistakable outline of a black Pitbull. The second photo was worse. A body, or what was left of one, laid out on a coroner's table. Limbs mangled. Face barely there. Torn to pieces, like something wild got to him. The only reason I could tell it had been a man was the watch still clinging to his wrist. "His name was Leonard Grant," the deputy said quietly. "Lived in a trailer off Old Sawmill Road. Neighbors said he had a dog. Black Pitbull, big one, used to bark all night." I looked at Shadow. He looked back at me, calm, like none of this meant anything to him. "We found Grant's body last week," the deputy continued. "Mostly bones. What was left had bite marks, deep ones. Forensics pulled saliva from the tissue. We ran the DNA." He paused, licked his lips, like the words he was about to say might change something. "The DNA matched your dog." I said nothing, just stared at the ground. "Look, Mr. Morgan, I'm not here to confiscate him. Legally, we can't prove anything without video. But I needed to warn you. That dog has a history. Violent one. Might have been trained to fight. Might have been abused. Or worse, might have just learned to like it." The deputy shifted his weight, uneasy. Shadow, still beside me, exhaled a slow breath and laid down like none of it mattered. "You do what you want," he added. "Just don't turn your back on him." Then he tipped his hat and left. That night I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about what the deputy said. About that man Grant. I knew the type, old drunks who got mean with animals. I'd seen it growing up. Whip the dog, throw beer bottles at it, then act surprised when something snapped one night. Still, it didn't explain the calm, the patience, the calculating silence that Shadow moved with. If he was just some wild mutt, he'd have torn into me by now. But no, he was waiting. Around 2:00 a.m. I heard the scratching again. Back door. But when I opened it, Shadow wasn't there. Only the screen door creaking in the wind. And a dead rattlesnake curled neatly on the welcome mat. Jaw crushed. Spine snapped. Like a warning. Or a gift. After the deputy's visit, I tried to keep things normal. As normal as you can when you're sleeping with one eye open and a loaded .45 under your pillow. Shadow didn't change, not on the surface. Still followed me out to the barn in the morning. Still lay by my boots while I had coffee. Still didn't bark, didn't whine, didn't wag his tail. He was calm, collected. Too calm for a dog with that kind of past. But the air around him felt different. He was watching more than usual. Not me, but the woods. Every time we passed the edge of the property, his ears, perked nose twitching. Sometimes he'd just stop and stare into the trees like something was there waiting. One night, I couldn't help myself. I grabbed a flashlight, slung my rifle over my shoulder, and followed the direction he'd been looking all week. Didn't go far, maybe 50 yards into the brush. That's when I saw it. A hole. Not a natural one. Dug deep into the ground behind a mess of tumbleweed and mesquite roots, about the size of a small fridge, and around it, bones, scattered. Some animal jackrabbit, I think. Some... maybe not. But what stopped me cold wasn't the hole. It was what was inside, lined with fabric, torn canvas, blankets, and wedged against the dirt wall half-buried a child's backpack. Pink, faded, with a cracked Disney princess patch stitched on it. I didn't touch anything. Didn't even breathe, I think. I backed out slow and made my way home. Shadow met me halfway sitting in the dark, like a statue blocking the path. He didn't growl, just stared at me, eyes shining in the flashlight beam like marbles. When I got back to the house, I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and left the lights on all night. Next morning, I called the sheriff's office. Told them I found something behind my barn. Didn't say much else. They said they'd send someone out the following day. But someone didn't wait that long. That night around 10 p.m. I heard tires on gravel. Not official. Old pickup by the sound of it. I watched from the front window as a man got out, looked around, and headed for the edge of the woods, straight toward the hole. I didn't recognize him, but Shadow did. He exploded off the porch like a bullet. Fast and dead silent. The man barely had time to turn before Shadow was on him, snarling jaws locked onto his arm. The guy screamed, kicked, tried to crawl away, but Shadow pinned him like a lion with a deer. I fired 2 warning shots in the air. That got Shadow to back off, just enough for me to drag the guy up. He was bleeding, shaking pants, soaked. And more than scared, he looked guilty. I didn't have to ask what he was doing out there. The cops came at dawn. Turns out the man Travis Langley had done time for assault and had been a suspect in a missing persons case 5 years ago. A little girl vanished from a rest stop 20 miles south. Nothing ever came of it, until now. They brought dogs, cadaver teams, FBI even showed up. And that hole behind my barn, it wasn't the only one. They found 3 more, all old, all filled. And Shadow. He stood near each one before they found them. Just stood there, like he'd always known. That's when I realized something. Maybe Shadow hadn't just wandered into my life by accident. Maybe he was hunting. After the FBI packed up and left things around the ranch got real quiet. Too quiet. They took Travis Langley into custody, and from what I heard later, he cracked after 12 hours. Confessed to burying more than one victim out in these woods. Claimed he just couldn't help it. Said something about a voice that told him where to go. The feds brushed that off as the rambling of a guilty man, but I wasn't so sure, because Shadow. He was different after that night. He stopped sleeping by the stove. Started pacing more. Every evening around sundown he'd stand at the edge of the porch, nose to the air body tense like he was waiting for something. One night I stayed up to watch him. At 2:17 a.m., I remember the exact time he stood, trotted down the steps, and walked off into the dark. No sound, no hesitation. Just vanished into the trees, like he belonged to the night more than he ever belonged to me. I figured he'd come back in the morning. He didn't. Not the next day. Not the day after. By day 4, I started leaving food out. By day 7, I was driving around back roads calling for him. But Shadow was gone. Just gone. That same week, news broke out about a missing hiker over in Mogollon Rim, 2 counties away. Young guy, mid-20s. They found his tent-shredded sleeping bag untouched. His boots were still there, sitting neatly by the fire ring. But no sign of him. Then came another, a woman camping with her brother near Prescott National Forest. He stepped out to pee. Came back, she was gone. No signs of struggle. No tracks. Just her jacket still folded on a log. The news ran both stories back to back with eerie similarities. Rangers said mountain lions, maybe even a rogue bear. But the truth is, people don't just vanish without noise. Something was off. I started to wonder if Shadow was still out there, doing what he was built to do. And if so, was he protecting people or judging them? A week later, I got a call from the deputy, same guy who came to my ranch. "Hank," he said, voice low, "you're gonna want to see this." He emailed me a photo. Grainy zoomed in from a trail cam set up outside a game warden's cabin in Navajo County. The image showed a figure standing in the woods. Not a man, not quite a dog, but those eyes, reflective, yellow, watching. And beside the tree stump, a torn flannel shirt, half buried. I zoomed in, felt my blood go cold. There next to the stump in the dirt was a paw print. Deep, heavy, distinctly Pitbull. I didn't sleep that night. Every crack of wood in the house made my hand twitch toward the nightstand. Every gust of wind against the screen door made my skin crawl. But it wasn't fear. It was guilt. Because now I had a question I couldn't shake. What kind of man attracts a dog like Shadow? 2 mornings later, I found something on my porch. It wasn't a rabbit, not a snake, not even a dead squirrel. It was a photograph old bent at the edges, stuck under a rock. I picked it up with trembling hands. It showed a group of 5 men at a bonfire. Laughing, drinking arms slung over shoulders. I recognized one of them immediately, Travis Langley, and another, younger with a mustache and thinner face. Me! It was from 1989. I'd forgotten about that night. Or maybe I'd just chosen to forget. But Shadow didn't. He remembered. He always remembered. The photo sat on my kitchen table for 3 straight days. I couldn't stop staring at it. 5 men. 1 bonfire. One night I'd buried so deep in my memory, I'd convinced myself it never happened. But it did. I was 23. Fresh out of the army, restless, full of booze and testosterone. That night in the woods was supposed to be harmless, just a group of guys blowing off steam. But when Travis started picking on that hitchhiker, that skinny kid with the dirty backpack, things turned dark fast. I didn't lay a hand on him, I swear to that. But I didn't stop it either. I stood there, I watched, and I walked away before it was over. No one ever talked about it again. I told myself the kid probably ran off. Told myself he was just scared. Told myself we didn't mean any harm. But Shadow knew better. And now, I did too. 2 days after the photo appeared, I drove out to the edge of my property. Parked the truck. Took a bottle of rye and a shovel and walked into the woods. Didn't know where I was going exactly, just followed instinct. Or maybe guilt. After about a mile in, I found a clearing I didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. The earth was soft there. Too soft for this time of year. I started digging. Didn't take long before the metal of my shovel hit something hard. I dropped to my knees and pulled out a bone. Human. Small. And then I heard him. A low growl from behind me. I turned slow. There he was. Shadow. Standing at the tree line, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't speak. Didn't reach for the gun I no longer carried. Instead, I dropped the shovel and sat back in the dirt. I didn't kill him, I said aloud. But I let it happen. Shadow stepped forward slow and deliberate. No barking. No snarling. Just a presence, heavy and ancient. Like judgment wearing a fur coat. He sat down across from me, watching. Waiting. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. Finally I stood. My knees popped. My hands were shaking. "You want me to pay," I whispered. "I get that." But Shadow didn't move. Instead he stood up, turned around, and walked away. Back into the trees. Back into whatever place he came from. He didn't look back. I went to the sheriff the next morning. Told him everything. About that night in '89. About what Travis did, about the others who stood there, me included. I gave names, dates, every ugly detail I could remember. They reopened the case. 2 other men from that photo were arrested. I was never charged. Statute of limitations, they said. But I wasn't looking for freedom. I was looking for penance. It's been 6 months since Shadow disappeared into those woods. Folks still talk about the Pitbull who found bodies before the dogs ever could. Some say he was trained. Others say he was part wolf. One old rancher swears he was cursed. But I think Shadow was something else. Not a dog, not a ghost. Something between a reckoner, a messenger, a memory that bites back. Last week I found fresh paw prints on my porch. Big ones. Too big for any dog in this county. Next to them was a dead snake laid out neatly, spine crushed. Like a gift. Or maybe a goodbye. There's a wind that rolls off the desert in early spring. Not cold, not warm, just heavy. Like it's carrying something. Memories, ghosts, regret. That's what I felt on the morning I found the old collar. It wasn't mine. It was curled up on the porch, caked in dry mud, cracked leather, faded with age. No tag, just one word scratched into the inside with something sharp. Witness! I sat down in the rocker with my coffee, held that collar in both hands, and stared out over the fields. The pasture looked the same as it always had. The sun was still rising behind the same distant ridge. But something had shifted. I hadn't seen Shadow since that day in the woods. And yet, it felt like he never really left. The sheriff called me again last week. Another missing person. A trucker this time parked off a service road near the border. Found his rig idling lights on door open. No driver. Just his phone left on the dash flashlight still warm in the glove box. There were no tire tracks. No sign of a struggle. But they did find one thing half buried in the dirt near the edge of the woods. A paw print. Same size, same depth. Still no sightings. No photos. Just whispers. Some say Shadow's gone rogue. Some say he's gone holy. One Navajo elder told the sheriff that Shadow is no longer a dog. He's a spirit now. A hunter of broken men. A protector of the voiceless. Me, I don't know what to believe. But I believe this much. Whatever he is, he's still out there. I've kept the ranch quiet since then. No guests, no hands. Just me, the horses, and time. But every now and then, I find things left behind. A single glove in the barn. A child's toy near the stream. A torn bootlace looped on the fence post. None of it mine, none of it recent. All of it feels like pieces of something unfinished. Last night I dreamed of Shadow. We were walking side by side down a dirt road at dusk. He didn't speak, of course not. But I felt what he was saying. Not with words. With presence. He stopped at a crossroad. Looked at me once, just once, and then trotted off toward the tree line. That's where I woke up. Alone but not empty. I think about that word on the collar sometimes. Witness. Not victim, not survivor, not hero. Just someone who saw. And maybe that's all Shadow ever wanted from me. To see what I'd done, what I'd let happen. To stop pretending. To remember. So here's my question for you. The one watching this, maybe from the comfort of your couch, or behind a screen late at night. What would Shadow see in you? If that dog showed up on your porch tonight, silent still eyes like old fire, would you pet him? Or would you run? Because the truth is, we all carry things. Mistakes. Regrets. Secrets we've buried so deep we've forgotten they're still breathing. And maybe Shadow is still out there reminding folks like us that some things don't stay buried.